the CEO of the Stellar Development Foundation, where our mission is to leverage blockchain technology to drive equitable access to the global financial system. So some of you may or may not be familiar with Stellar. So in our brief time together today, we're going to try to tackle as much of this as we can, starting with an introduction of who we are at the Stellar Development Foundation and an overview of Stellar, how it works, what it was designed to do in the payment space, and its most powerful features. So we'll talk about the business building on Stellar today, and you'll get to hear from one of them. Richard Lima, who's the COO of ClickPesa, will be joining me to discuss how ClickPesa accomplishes its mission by serving as an anchor on the Stellar network. And of course, we're going to leave time at the end to answer any questions that you have. But let me kick us off by sharing who we are at the Stellar Development Foundation. We call it SDF for short, and the role we play in the blockchain industry. So SDF is a nonprofit organization. It was founded in 2014 to support the development and growth of the open source Stellar network. So with Stellar, SDF seeks to unlock the world's economic potential by making money more fluid, markets more open, and people more empowered. The foundation helps maintain Stellar's code base, supports the technical and business communities around Stellar, and is a speaking partner to regulators and institutions. So everything the SDF does is aimed at making the network as a whole successful. We exist in part because today's financial system just isn't working for everyone. So while advancements in technology have made it so that information can be shared instantly with anyone in the world from anywhere in the world, that isn't the same that it's not true for money and for value transfer. Today's payments landscape is slow, it's costly, and it relies on unchanged legacy systems. Of the hundreds of different monetary systems all around the world, each has its own unique set of services. So think ACH and SEPA, and connections to the parallel systems outside its borders. So assets exist in siloed databases across disparate payment schemes. And it takes a lot of time and resources to interoperate between systems. So all of these disparate banks, money transfer operators, and treasuries combine to make up the entire global financial system as we know it today. At its best, today's system is slow, cumbersome, and fraught with fees. But at its worst, it leaves millions of people out of it. They don't have access to traditional financial infrastructure. So here's where we come in. Blockchain technology provides a new foundation for us to think about money, presenting the opportunity to make the transfer of value better, more effective, and more efficient. In much the same way that the internet democratized access to information, we believe blockchain can democratize access to the financial system. It can make sending value around the world as easy as sending an email. So Stellar, which is what I'm going to talk about today, is a blockchain network designed to become the next global payment standard. It's intended to enhance rather than supplant the existing financial system, which is important, and that's something that we talk to regulators about all the time. To understand how Stellar can set the global payment standard, I want to start by explaining what Stellar is. Because while the average consumer might not need to know how this technology works, all of you may be able to leverage this technology to serve consumers and citizens alike. So, what is Stellar? At a high level, Stellar is a decentralized open network that connects the world's financial structure. I guess that's all I got to say, right? Kidding. No, it's a global public blockchain that is built for interoperability and to further financial access and inclusion. So it does that by helping to make this money more fluid, thanks to the speed and scale of the Stellar blockchain to transfer this value. It helps make the markets more open because when financial infrastructure is connected, you have greater geographical and affordable access to markets. And ultimately, it empowers humans, people like us, because it gives them real ownership of the value they have in their possession. So how does Stellar manage to do all of those things? To understand how Stellar connects financial systems so they can work together on a single platform, we're going to delve a little bit into the following three questions. So one, how is value represented on Stellar? Two, how does value move on Stellar? And three, why should you build on Stellar? So let's start with the first one. How is value represented on Stellar? So Stellar allows anyone to create a redeemable, tradable representation of any asset in a few simple lines of code. Often we call these assets digital tokens. Token issuance is the backbone of the Stellar network. It's how Stellar connects the world's currencies, and it's what Stellar was built for. So you can issue a token that represents anything from corn bushels to gold to an hour of your time as a consultant. But to be honest, tokens are most useful when they're tied to fiat currency, such as dollars or yuan or euros. So these fiat-backed tokens are issued by regulated financial institutions, money service businesses, or fintech companies that we call anchors. Anchors help create a world where the existing financial system is connected to and interoperable with Stellar. They serve as what we call the on and off ramps for the network. An anchor connects Stellar to a local banking system and handles regulatory compliance by doing things like collecting your know your customer, or as we call it, KYC information, so users can make deposits and withdrawals. A user obtains a Stellar network asset by depositing traditional currency with an anchor using traditional rails, like think credit cards or wire transfers, or so any of the ACH or SEPA. They can then hold that asset in a Stellar wallet or an application, use it to make payments, or to trade it for other assets on the network, or frankly, just to hold it. Anchors maintain fiat reserves equivalent to the value of issued tokens, so users can redeem them back to fiat at any time. We call this one-to-one backing. So when people hold the tokens, they treat them just like traditional money because they know that they're exchangeable for traditional money in the end. So we're working with anchors, these financial institutions, from all over the world to build what we call the Anchor Network. We've grown to more than 20 anchor services with many more in progress. Stellar powers each of these entities and so many more as they are solving the prevalent needs in their regional markets. Each of these entities from all parts of the world comprise our ecosystem and are part of the solution that we are collectively building as we seek to achieve a world in which where you live and what you have no longer should prohibit you from participating in the financial system. It's actually super simple to us. Equitable access is not a privilege, it's a right. This map isn't about potential. It shows the achievements blockchain has already made, connecting global financial infrastructure. And that's what Stellar was created for, and what SDF is set to support. The blockchain future isn't something like really distant. It's now. This progress is born of fostering new products and new relationships. So remember this map because we're going to come back to it in just a bit. But first, I want to explain a little bit more about our technology. So now that you understand how Stellar was designed for asset issuance and how assets like the US dollar are represented as tokens on the Stellar network, and that anchors provide the on and off for these tokens, let's go just a level deeper. How does this value actually move on Stellar? So value can be moved in ways. The simplest and most common way to move value on Stellar is to make a payment. So I send USD and you receive USD. So instead of sending value to another user, I can also trade an asset. So this is the second way. I can trade an asset that I hold for an asset on the network. So I sell USD for euro. And finally, the third way, I can combine the two in a path payment, which allows me to send one currency and have the recipient receive another. So I send USD, you receive euro. Trades and path payments are possible because Stellar has a built-in decentralized exchange. So in addition to tracking balances, just as Bitcoin and Ethereum do, Stellar also tracks and settles trades in a decentralized, ownerless way. It has common built-in order books called the Decentralized Exchange. We call it the DEX for short. Every token on Stellar is exchangeable with every other token on the network. And the Stellar protocol itself connects buyers and sellers with each other. So users can submit their bids or asks to the public network via a simple operation. And with every ledger close, compatible trades will automatically resolve without the use of intermediaries. So the decentralized exchange facilitates universal currency conversion, which is not only great for traders, but it's also really great for cross-border, cross-currency transaction called path payments. So a path payment allows a user to send one currency and have the recipient receive another. Just a super powerful innovation for international payments. So for example, an American company can pay an invoice in Mexico by spending dollar tokens, because they may hold those, while the vendor receives peso tokens in Mexico. Neither side incurs exchange risk or delays. Both sides get only the currency that they want, but Stellar automatically finds the best conversion rate via the DEX. So path payments are the fulfillment of Stellar's interoperability promise. Value flows seamlessly from one account to another account in whatever form is most useful. And each of these payments can happen on Stellar in 3 to 5 seconds. So it all starts with the ledger. Users, which could be a wallet holder, users of other apps that can be consumer or B2B, wherever they are in the world, submit transactions to send and exchange assets on the network. They can move funds anywhere in the world and convert currencies along the way, thanks to a native token. The asset issuers here determine where and how their digital assets are used. So Stellar offers heightened compliance and control with what we refer to as authorization required. Stellar's technology enables anyone who is issued a token to require authorization before anyone can hold or transact with their token. Now, this is just a piece of the technology that someone can choose to use. But if they do use it, that means that in addition to performing checks at the on and off ramp, an asset issuer can set it up so that their token can't be sent without their authorization. Meaning they can run required checks, whether those are KYC or anti-money laundering or any additional checks they want or are required pending the regulation applicable to the asset or function being performed, before anyone holds their token. So these transactions are bundled into sets, confirmed by validating nodes and applied to the ledger, at which point they're final and they create an immutable record. And the whole process starts over again. Again, that's in 3 to 5 seconds. You have the baseline about how Stellar represents and moves value. So let's talk a little bit more about why people are building on Stellar today. So I've touched on some of Stellar's more compelling features: asset issuance, speed, cost, compliance, but there are many more. So let me spend a minute here sharing some of the features and functionality that I think make Stellar such a powerful technology. First, Stellar is fast and affordable. Transactions are confirmed, as I said before, in 3 to 5 seconds, and transactions on the network for the companies and developers are negligible. High enough to deter the transaction costs are negligible, enough to deter the bad actors, but low enough to keep it accessible to global developers. Another key feature that I touched on earlier is compliance. Regulations and compliance aren't new to blockchain. Businesses in this space have to follow existing regulations that apply to the functions or service that they are providing to their users. So in the payment space, anti-money laundering and know your customer regulations exist to protect against illicit transactions like terrorist financing, fraud, and laundering. So in short, any bad actors trying to hide what they are really up to. So for example, if you created an asset on Stellar and you offer your users a custodial wallet as an on and off ramp to move that asset to and from fiat currencies in the real world, Stellar has built-in functionality that makes it easy for businesses on the network to perform processes like KYC, know your customer, and AML, anti-money laundering checks, before accepting deposits or honoring withdrawals. These are built in at the protocol level. So again, easy to access, easy to use, no complicated coding required. The network also has a compliance protocol for sending and receiving institutions to use to share that KYC and AML information about the senders and recipients of the transactions, so they can share it with other institutions that they're sending value to. Stellar is open source and supports common development languages like Java. The documentation. We really pride ourselves on the documentation. We focus a lot on trying to make it easy and accessible for you to get started. Developers can quickly build and operate on the network due to the inherent functionality and expansive support resources, including an on-chain decentralized order book, that's the DEX, fast close time, 5 seconds for the ledgers, negligible transaction costs, it's actually 1 stroop, which is a very tiny amount of lumen, and the ease of creating new assets. A test network, comprehensive tutorials, well-documented, straightforward SDKs in many languages, and an engaged existing ecosystem that is eager to help help projects gain traction immediately. So for example, there's trading that's available on StellarX and other exchanges and sites out there, and there are so many wallets. All this means developers can focus on their product and the needs for what the users in their region have. And one last one I want to highlight is sustainability. So not all blockchains achieve consensus in the same way. And certain consensus mechanisms consume enormous amounts of energy resources. So our consensus protocol is not proof of work or proof of stake. It's FBA, which is a Federated Byzantine Agreement. And that means it requires the energy it takes just to run a server. So I have one more question left to address. Who is Stellar for? Stellar is an open participation, permissionless network. So really anyone can build anything that they can imagine on Stellar. But generally, it's used by companies offering financial products and services who take advantage of its features to build better solutions to real-world problems. So let's come back to that anchor map I showed you so that we can talk about how businesses are building out these anchor services globally to connect financial infrastructure, especially across Africa. According to a World Bank forecast, remittance flows to sub-Saharan African countries were expected to dip by 23.1% in 2020 due to people having less funds to send back home during a pandemic, but inch back up by 4% in 2021. This slow recovery indicates that any progress made to make payments easier, faster, and cheaper can only benefit those who need them the most. So thanks to the work of our BD and ecosystem teams, so our business development and ecosystem teams, several financial institutions have really established themselves as Stellar anchors, such as Cowrie, Flutterwave, ClickPesa, and Uruhu. Now, customers can use these anchors to send and receive payments at a fraction of what they would have to pay at traditional financial institutions with faster settlement times. These anchors are also primed to partner with other anchors, often located in other regions with different currencies, thus expanding their businesses to markets where they couldn't access before. So now I'd like to introduce you to one of these anchors. This is ClickPesa. I'm also happy to welcome, I saw him up there just a moment ago, but I wanted to see I'm happy to welcome Richard Lima, who's the co-founder and COO of ClickPesa, to the virtual stage with me. Richard, are you here yet? I think he might have had to drop.
I believe he might be having technical difficulties, in which case, Danelle, we can also hop directly into Q&A, and hopefully he'll be able to come back and share their story.
Perfect. So I'll just say about ClickPesa, they are an anchor on the Stellar network. I really hope that you get to hear from Richard. They focus on the small to medium-sized businesses, and it's pretty great, all the available tools they have for all of you out there to be able to leverage. So let's go to the Q&A section now, and then hopefully Richard can join us.
Great presentation, Danelle, and I'm going to help you with the Q&A. And yes, indeed, I'm hoping that he will be able to join back, as I saw him earlier as well. So one of the question that I have on the Q&A section here is that you've mentioned that euro or dollar or yen or peso, but does it work with any other African currency such as XOF? Would you say that besides XOF, any other African currency can actually work with the Stellar network? If so, what will be the requirement for any other, for example, from the DRC to Namibia to Malawi to Zimbabwe even? What will be the requirements to make it work?
So right now we have a Nigerian asset. It's called the Naira, so the NGNT. It's called the NGNT for the Naira. So that asset is available because we actually have Cowrie, who is an issuing anchor in Nigeria, and issues that asset. XOF is something that's actually coming online as well. And there is also another anchor that's coming on in Tanzania, so they will issue an asset there as well. So there are opportunities for all of these assets to be live and on Stellar. And again, it takes literally 2 lines of code to be able to make this happen. But we at the Stellar Development Foundation spend a lot of time with, and these are all free services from us because again, we're a nonprofit just focused on development of the network, So any entity that would like to become an anchor on the Stellar network, you can do it without talking to us. We hope that the documentation out there is awesome and easy for you to use. But if you really wanted help and assistance to be able to issue assets or to become a send or receive anchor, we're available for any support that you may have. But any asset can be available on Stellar.
That's great. You mentioned anchor. So someone is asking the question here: what are the requirements for being an anchor on the Stellar network?
Yeah, so we don't set requirements to be an anchor on the network, but I'll tell you that the local regulators do. And here's why. Anytime you're touching fiat, whether you're touching fiat as an on or off ramp, they know how to regulate fiat. And so the regulators have indicated that financial institutions should be the only institutions that have the ability to touch fiat. And so the local regulations will determine what you need, what the requirements are for you to be an anchor in terms of like whether you can touch the fiat as an on and on ramp. But for us, we just want you to be able to understand how the network operates, and we'll help you to do that. You have to have the licenses and whatnot for your region. But other than that, there's not a whole lot that's required for anchor work.
Talking about license, actually, and I think I'm going to tag it along with another question that I see here. Is there any requirement from the central bank to support any local currency and using the Stellar network? And I suppose when you're referring to the license, could you perhaps enlighten me as to what type of a license we're looking for here?
So it depends on the region. I'll start with that last question first. The local regions are going to set what kind of license that you need to be like a money transmitter, or to be to basically, it gets back to the point of touching fiat. So anytime you touch fiat, you have license requirements in each of the regions. So those are the licenses that are required. In terms of central banks, there are central banks that are considering issuing like the central bank digital asset.